such the evasion. But we also continuously do planning on what the force elements will be utilized by the COCOM commanders based off the needs that they present.
But our the advanced.
Even Republicans are angry. Republican members of Congress are speaking out against Donald Trump, Donald Trump's top military leaders, and Donald Trump's Defense Department during congressional hearings broadcast live for the whole world to see. I want to show you what happened at the latest congressional hearing. The hearing took place before the Armed Services Committee, where Republican members of Congress joined Democratic members in a largely bipartisan effort to criticize the Trump administration's actions involving the military. These lawmakers did not hold back as they questioned the top military officials, including Army Secretary Dan Driscoll and the new Army Chief of Staff, who replaced the widely respected Army Chief of Staff Randy George after he was removed from the position by Pete Hegseth. So, let me show you what happened when Republican Congressman Don Bacon questioned Driscoll and the other top military officials, including the Army Chief of Staff and other senior Army leaders who appeared at this hearing. The hearing focused on Hegseth and the Defense Department's decision to pull about 4,000 troops that had been stationed in Poland, which is clearly important because of its location near Ukraine and Russia and because Poland has been a strong ally. Donald Trump and Hegseth are treating Poland the same way they treated Germany by putting pressure on a key NATO partner. Now watch Republican Congressman Don Bacon question these top military officials from the Trump administration. Let's play it.
Laneef, for being here. I know this wasn't your decision. This was the Secretary of Defense's decision. But I got to tell you, it's reprehensible. It's an embarrassment to our country what we just did to Poland, in my view. So I know you said we had coordination with NATO or EUCOM. To answer it, the real question is why? Why have we pulled 2 armor brigades out of Eastern Europe?
Yeah, sure. I'm not on the policy side here.
But you are the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Sure.
There is no good explanation why we just removed 2 armored brigades from Eastern Europe. There's got to be some explanation.
Well, sure. I think as they reviewed the force structure, the conclusion was that we could reap back one of the brigades that are in the rotation. One brigade that's in the rotation pull that we send over to Europe. There's still another brigade there. There's still a division headquarters that's in rotation there. We still have 5th Corps that is over there as well.
But we pulled the brigade out of Romania. Now we're pulling the brigade out of Poland. Is there a plan to replace that brigade of Poland?
That you would have to ask the COCOM commander, sir, on how he's going to maneuver the forces that he has. We still have a force structure that is permanent force structure that's in Europe supporting our allies through both exercises and continual presence on the continent.
I know I may not represent 100% of people in this committee, but I think I represent the views of the vast majority. We disagree. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Have they given us any concessions to withdraw 2 armor brigades out of Europe as they're invading Ukraine? What concessions have they given us as we withdraw forces?
Sure, I can't answer that question.
Well, I know there's none. And this is why it's so foolish. We're sending a terrible message to Russia and to our allies. Here's another question. Do we know if Poland was notified by the secretary?
We don't know.
Well, I already know the answer because they called me yesterday. They did not know. They were blindsided. These are some of our best allies, and they had no idea. They still don't know what the plan. They know, okay, the order was stopped. They don't know if this is just a suspension or permanent. We owe Poland, and our Baltic friends, who are very vulnerable from this decision, a better explanation here and a rational. We should be doing this before we actually make the decision. We should be coordinating with them. It's an embarrassment. I'm telling you, this is an embarrassment to our country, the way this is being handled. And I happen to know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask, you said we coordinated with EUCOM. I can guarantee you they did not say this was low risk. Can you verify that? Because I happen to know they said it carries risk. So in other words, it was coordinated with EUCOM, but they did not say this was a low risk decision. Am I right?
Sure. Those discussions, that risk, from the co-commander back into OSW, it's not part of what the Title 10 of the Army does.
I was just hoping as the Army chief, they would keep you better informed. But I happen to know this because I served in NATO. They did not say this is low risk. So in other words, the Secretary of Defense made this decision over some objections of the EUCOM commander. That's what I submit here. I just want to say this is a slap in the face to Poland. It's a slap in the face to our Baltic friends. I think it's a slap to the face in this committee because we've put floors and restrictions on the Pentagon and further reductions in Europe because of what they did with Romania. They told this committee, or the leadership of this committee, that we were not going to, there was no plans to remove this brigade from Romania. Then a week later, it was done. So then we responded in the NDAA to prevent this kind of behavior, and it's happened again. I think this committee, under the chairman, the ranking member, we got to hold the secretary accountable for this decision. It's wrong. Okay, my second question, I know I'm the Baltic Security Chairman. Latvia and Estonia have HIMARS, but they just have the launchers.
Next, I'll show you another member of Congress, this time Democratic Congressman Cartney, as he questions these military officials. Let's play his clip.
Secretary Driscoll, on May 1st, 4,000 Army soldiers of the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team attended a color casing ceremony, a send-off ahead of deployment to Eastern Europe that the Army had announced last March. At the ceremony, Major General Tom Felty, who's the head of the 1st Cavalry Division, gave some very stirring remarks where he said, quote, "Make no mistake, our adversaries are paying attention. When an Armored Brigade Combat Team deploys forward, it sends a clear and unmistakable signal. The ABCT is the embodiment of American ground combat power." Given the fact that the administration just canceled this deployment a couple days ago, we had people actually already over there right now. I guess the question sort of begs itself, which is the opposite true? If our adversaries are paying attention, is the cancellation of a deployment of a brigade combat team sending, again, the opposite signal in terms of our commitment to our allies in Eastern Europe?
Sure. Thank you for the question. The COCOM commander, General Grinkovich, received the instructions on the force reduction. I've worked with him in close consultation of what that force unit would be, and it made the most sense for that brigade to not do its deployment in theater. We can continue to work closely with General Grinkovich and his team on ensuring that he has the right forces from us, the Title 10, headquarters here that mans, trains, equips, and gets the units ready for their deployments. So we worked with him on what would be the unit that would not execute the mission.
Well, again, I think General Felty is right that our adversaries are paying attention, and that I appreciate the answer, but frankly, I don't think that really rises to the moment in terms of just, again, the situation that exists in Europe. And frankly, it's not just our adversaries that are paying attention; it's our allies. Poland, which is apparently where the deployment was at least going to begin and originate, is an ally that's spending 4.8% of GDP in terms of their defense budgets, and all the other Baltic countries are up in that range as well. And given the fact that the administration also canceled or is pulling back 5,000 troops out of Germany, I'm sorry, I just think this is a horrible message that, again, our adversaries and allies are paying attention to.
Now, in this next clip, I want to show you that this happened on a largely bipartisan basis in the Armed Services Committee, because the decisions being made by these top military officials, especially at the Defense Department and the Oval Office level, including Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth, are so dangerous. They are so harmful to NATO and so damaging to our allies that even Republicans are speaking out. You have Committee Chairman Congressman Rogers. You also have Republican Congressman Austin Scott from Georgia. Then you have the top Democratic member, Congressman Smith. All three are in agreement here, criticizing the Trump administration and its military officials. Let me show you what happened. Let's play this clip.
Was the 2nd Armored Brigade rotation to Poland canceled?
Just a couple days ago, Congressman.
Okay, a couple of days ago. And when were
So who made the decision to halt that?
Sure. In consultation with the COCOM commander, he received the direction to do the reduction. We looked at what would be the best choice.
When did he receive that direction?
Sure, I'm not sure exactly the date that he received it. This was all, relatively recent, and we worked back and forth on what those recommendations would be, and the order came down that
Okay, let me-
brigade would be one of them.
I'm sorry, I'm short on time. You say recent. When you say recent, you mean 10 days or?
Yeah, I
2
think
months.
it's probably been within the last 2 weeks. Yes, sir.
Okay, within the last 2 weeks, the decision was made. So this has been a long plan. My understanding is advanced elements were already overseas. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And equipment was in transit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When were you informed of the decision, General?
Just a couple of days ago, whenever,
Okay.
within that
That's-
2 week window, sir.
Okay.
Whenever we work together with the COCOM commander,
Okay.
again, Title 10.
I understand. And Secretary Driscoll, were you informed at the exact same? I assume you were informed at the same time.
Yes, Congressman.
Okay. Were you consulted about the decision prior to the decision being made, or was the decision made and you told this is the decision and we're going to stop this rotation?
Sure. I had consultations with General Grinkovich on different elements that are in Europe and what would be the most prudent one
Okay.
to stop.
Okay. And these conversations were all within the last 2 weeks.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. All right. I support NATO. I will say this. Obviously, there's a tremendous overlap between NATO and the European Union. I'm very frustrated with the European Union on a lot of trade-related issues, and I've told our NATO partners in my office very directly, you don't get to pretend you're our friends when you pass non-tariff trade barriers through the European Union that damage industry in the United States, like the timber industry with what they've done with the European Union deforestation regulations. So I understand it's tough to balance all of these things, but I want to get to, my primary concern, I'm not worried about the 5,000 troops coming out of Germany. They had been plussed up. They're being pulled back. But it seems to me that when there's been a long planned rotation, it's a 9-month rotation. How long have we been doing these rotations? They're done on an annual.
Yeah, we've been doing them for a couple of years now, sir, since the invasion. But we also continuously do planning on what the force elements will be utilized by the COCOM commanders based off the needs that they present.
But our the advanced were already there. The equipment was already on the way before the decision to cancel was made. Correct. All right. I want to read this is what the Pentagon said. The decision to withdraw troops follows a comprehensive, multi-layered process that incorporates perspectives from key leaders in U.S. military in Europe and across the chain of command, said Acting Pentagon Secretary Joel Valdez. This is not an unexpected last-minute decision. I don't see how that statement can be true.
Congressman, I would say outside of the broader specifics that General Laniv is talking about, we are constantly in contact with OSW and the combatant commanders. We're having planning, and this is not meant to hide the ball. This is to say this type of conversation is going on throughout the year, every single year, and the Army is always ready to move people and things based off combatant commander and Secretary of War's preferences. And so this is not that unusual.
Secretary, I respect you. These are major decisions that appear to many of the members of this committee to be last-minute decisions.
Gentleman's time's expired, and the gentleman is correct. We have been very focused on this committee about force posture and UCOM in particular not being disturbed, particularly without what statute requires is consultation with us And we didn't get that. So we don't know what's going on here, but I can just tell you, we're not happy with what's being talked about, particularly since there's been no statutory consultation with us. Ranking members recognize.
Emphasize that point, and I yielded my question time. But the one thing I really want, and we talked about this yesterday, General, why? Okay, I can't even get an answer to that question. All right, we had a brigade combat team ready to go to Poland, decided not to, and the only answer I've got is, well, that's what they told us to do. Okay, why? I mean, what is the strategy behind this? And it is a pretty dramatic decision to, at the last minute, pull a team that you're trying to send over there. If there's some strategy behind it, then you guys ought to know, and you ought to be able to communicate it.
And now I want to show you another important moment. Democratic Congressman Crow questioned Driscoll during the hearing, and this exchange really stood out. Remember, Congressman Crow is a Special Forces Army Ranger who served multiple serious combat tours. As a military veteran, he has deep knowledge of the Army from his years of service. Now watch as he raises what I believe is a very important issue. He points to the fact that the Trump administration removed the teams responsible for reducing civilian casualties during war, even as the Trump administration has been accused of committing war crimes. Let me show you what happened. Let's play it.
In the Army, and during the course of my 3 combat tours, I had the privilege of serving at the so-called tip of the spear, some of our most elite combat units, 82nd Airborne Division, 75th Ranger Regiment, served with the Joint Special Operations Command in Afghanistan. And I bristle at this notion coming from the Department of Defense, from Secretary Hegseth, that we somehow lack lethality. There's something wrong with our culture, because the men and women who I served with were committed to the mission and fought very hard and were very lethal when it came for the time for that. But over the course of those tours, what became very obvious to me is that what we did lack was a full understanding about how to win the support of local populations, how to lay the groundwork for support for what we were trying to achieve. That we were very good with missions, very great with tactics and accomplishing every mission, but we ultimately lost the support of the people in Iraq and Afghanistan who we were there to serve and to help liberate. So I created a bipartisan law in 2023 to create a Civilian Protection Center of Excellence, to assemble the best practices, to understand how we protect civilians. We make that a priority for our military. That CPCOE passed on a bipartisan basis years ago. It was nestled in the Army where it exists. I'm very concerned by a recent DoD IG report that says, quote, in February 2025, the acting Undersecretary of Defense and the Secretary of the Army each developed proposals for the SecDef to consider and approve options to eliminate or significantly reduce the CPCOE. How do you square that with law in the bipartisan intent of this committee, including many fellow combat veterans, that we make this a priority for our military?
Congressman, I just want to start off with the statement that, as somebody that also deployed to theater about the time you're talking about, civilian casualties, no one should wish for those, and they create all sorts of, beyond just the morality issues, they create all sorts of negative externalities for a mission that are just bad for the mission. And so we in the Department of War and the Army are perfectly aligned that we want to minimize those in every instance. Specifically what you're referencing, Congressman, as far as I recall, and I will follow up with your offices if this is incorrect, our intent was simply to move it from the Army to DOW. I don't think we had any intention to shrink it. There was an instance about a month and a half ago where I believe I spoke with your office, where in doing some, the United States Army had never matched up its people and its jobs. And so we spent about 10 months going through an exercise to try to save the American taxpayer about $2 billion a year. And what we had found out in that process is we had never accurately coded the positions for the center, so that when we went through that exercise, it looked as if we were getting rid of it. I believe after we spoke with your office, we immediately remedied it.
We need to follow up. I know our offices have been talking, but things are not squaring here, right? This DoD IG report is pretty clear. There are proposals to eliminate CPCOE, which is different from a coding shift or an accounting shift of personnel and resources, because the report went on and it said, it found that lost personnel and leadership at COE is hindering full DoD compliance with its civilian casualties and harm policy, a policy required by federal law. The Office of the Secretary of War and DoW components lack many of the personnel and tools designed to execute the statutory purpose. So something's not happening. It is not conducting its statutory role and mission. It's losing personnel. It's losing resources. It's being shifted around. This needs to be fixed because this is law. If you don't like the law, we can talk about that, what needs to be changed, but it has to be changed here. So long as it is law, it needs to be carried out.
Totally agree, Congressman. We'll follow up with your office. And just to speak on behalf of the Army, the intent is to follow all statutory intent and the laws. And so we'll make sure that we're in compliance.
Now, Republican Congressman Don Bacon posted the following. He said, "What the Trump administration is doing is a slap in the face to Poland. It's a slap in the face to our Baltic allies. It's a slap in the face to this committee." In response, Defense Department Press Secretary Sean Parnell said, "The decision to withdraw troops followed a detailed review that included input from senior leaders at EUCOM, European Command, and throughout the chain of command. This was not a last-minute decision, and it would be inaccurate to report it that way. But the political headline tells a different story. No one knew it was coming. Pentagon officials stunned by Hexit's decision on troops in Poland. It was not clear why the defense secretary gave the order to stop troops from deploying on a routine mission to a country the administration has called a model ally." In response, Republican Congressman Don Bacon wrote, "This is nonsense. First, Poland was not informed. Senior leaders contacted me yesterday and said they were completely surprised. I have also learned that EUCOM did not say there was little risk in canceling the deployment. This was a foolish and embarrassing decision. But you also have to ask yourself, who benefits from this? It benefits Putin, right? It leaves Poland more exposed and sends the message that the United States will not stand behind Poland. Just as the U.S. is not fully backing Ukraine, Donald Trump is also saying he may hold back weapons meant for Taiwan after meeting with Xi Jinping. As all of this happens, you can see America's rivals Russia, China, Kim Jong-un, and Iran gaining confidence. It's pretty clear what's happening. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe.